I think that Scott is tapping the back of his neck in sort of expectation of beginning this rather exciting interview. And I've got to be honest, so have I. Paddy's been sat there very, very patiently. So I'm going to pass over to Ross and Scott in the main to conduct this interview with Paddy Finn. Here we go. It's over to you, boys. Go.
Thank you, James. Can you hear me in the studio?
Yes.
Good to hear you. Yeah, the back of my neck has got a little reset button. I tap it every now and then just to clear out the cookies.
Yep.
Hi, Paddy. How are you?
Hey, I am very well, thank you. All the better for being here.
Yeah.
Nice.
Am I saying all the right things? Is this?
Nailed it.
Absolutely. Yep. Don't worry. £5 in the post to you.
Yeah. Mail that.
And you've had a lot of practice of saying all the right things lately because you have been a busy man.
Yeah. I don't know about saying all the right things. I say all the wrong things all the time, apparently, according to my wife. That's probably one of them. But yeah, it's been a busy few months, let's say, especially the last few weeks. So lots of fun though.
Nice. Yeah, and congratulations on the Kickstarter. It has done rather well. I believe the original goal was 12,000 and you're currently sitting at just over 62 or something like that.
Yes, I mean I've got the exact facts.
Exact.
If you like.
Very good,
yes.
Ross. Thank you, Ross. Go ahead,
Yes,
Ross.
They wanted 12,000 and they're currently on £62,427. 1,016 backers, and they've got 3 days left. So go out and have a look at that. Someone will post the link in the chat, I'm sure, for the Kickstarter.
Yes. Somebody's already posted the link for the lightsaber. And do you know what? There's getting some good feedback. Apparently people are saying, oh my God. So
Told you.
You told us.
Not about the lightsabers anymore, okay? Stop talking about the lightsabers.
You told us, Ross Kenobi.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the business hand. Something much more exciting.
Yeah.
Yes. No. So well done on that, Paddy. Also when James pronounced the name of the wizard, just before we get a confirmation from you, I was going to go with Azendor. Ross, any guesses?
Azendor.
I mean, I really want that to win now.
No, I know what I know what it is because I watched the thing. But
yeah, I might just change the whole thing around to make it fit that.
Which one? Did anyone get it right?
James got it right.
Yes. Amazing. Eisendor. Fantastic.
Nice.
Well done, James. Well done indeed. So yes, we have Eisendor's tome. What could you tell us just a little brief bit about this Kickstarter and what you're offering? I mean, I've had a look. I know roughly what you're offering. It is a huge, a gargantuan, a gold dragon's hoard worth of stuff here, but we'd love to hear it from yourself, Paddy.
Yeah, we kind of, this is the way my mind works. I start off with something. Let's make 20 magic items, and then before we know it, there's like 300 of them, 2 books, STLs, this, that, the other, dice trays. I was like, wow, how did this happen? But essentially, it all is based around Eisendor's Vault of Tragic Treasure, which is I guess you could call it a source book for 5e, and it has 300 plus magic items of a tragic nature. Some of those are mechanically tragic, as in they do horrible things or can do horrible things depending on the dice. However, most of them are more functional and usable for the game and aren't as game breaking, and those are tragic in that they have a tragic backstory. They've done something tragic in the past, so historically they're tragic in some way that feeds into the lore and the history, which it means they operate as a normal item, sort of. So we didn't want to just create a whole vault full of items that kind of kill people or break things or backfire, which some of them do. And then that also has actually a full chapter, which is chapter 1 is all based on lore. And then we have chapter 2, which is like just a bunch of adventures that shows you how to use those magic items or introduce them to your players, or just you could use them as one shots or mine them for ideas. And then chapter 3, of course, is the biggest chapter, and that's all the magic items.
Amazing.
Wow. I love the idea that a magic item could be involved in something tragic, and it sort of almost fundamentally changes its nature, its sort of essence, because it's a bit sad. Is that kind of vibe that goes in the book?
It is. It's something we wanted to lean on because there you can if you want a list of magic items, you can get them anywhere, and there are lots of really good books out there full of magic items. So we didn't want to create something that was, we didn't want to recreate the wheel. We wanted to create a revolution.
Hey! I know a college you should join, actually. Yes.
Yeah, so we wanted to put a different slant on it, and Tragic Treasure just sounds cool. So we worked out a way to work that in, and yeah, it's just been a lot of fun. One of the ways we wanted to show people, we wanted game masters to have ways in which to create epic moments in their storytelling more than anything else, and tragedy is a very powerful tool when it comes to storytelling. And one way we sort of helped people see that was those little adventures in the middle of the book. But we also created a second book of about 200 pages called The Order of Elemental Chaos. And that adventure is literally just, it is all based on one item out of Eisendor's Vault of Tragic Treasure. So it's I guess, a study in here's how you take one of the items and create a whole adventure out of it, that type of thing.
Cool.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting concept. There's plenty of magic items, I think, that people do base a segment of an entire campaign around. Certainly, like a huge plot hook. I think one of them that comes to mind easily is the Deck of Many Things, and just drawing something from that, and then like, wow, now you're all in hell. So there's a whole different thing there. I like the idea that someone's guarding this. Is it in the lore of the source book, Paddy? Is Eisendor guarding this vault to make sure nobody comes in and uses one of these things to, let's say, transport an entire bunch of party to hell?
So yes and no. So essentially, just to give you a really quick rundown of the lore, the vault was once a forge, and it had a very powerful anvil and hammer, and an elven, let's say, artificer who forged most of these items, and she took Eisendor on as an apprentice and tried to teach him this craft of making these incredible magic items. But the gods kind of wanted this artificer for themselves, such was her amazing craftsmanship, and they sort of caused her to ascend and become like minor deity on her own, and so that they could enjoy her craftsmanship. And then that kind of left the Eisendor behind, who hadn't really mastered the craft, and actually he was kind of he'd break things, and that's where some of the tragic thing comes from. He tried to create a magic item and it didn't really work, so it does stuff it shouldn't do. And then as she ascended, there was this thing called the Great Flash, which kind of tore holes in the fabric of the material plane, let's say, and it caused items to be scattered all over the place. So he then became Eisendor the Collector, and went kind of to retrieve all these dangerous magical items to put them back in the vault, because it then became a vault. And he's kind of where the story leaves off. It's like he's kind of disappeared a little bit from the pages of history and hasn't been mentioned for a while, but he has left, let's say, guards and seals and measures in place. So it is a vault that you can't just walk into. So there are like 8 seals, and that require 8 keys, and they're all based on the 8 schools of magic and things like that. So it kind of ties into the overall D&D theme.
I see.
Nice.
So the first quest would be to get into the vault itself before you could get your hands on any of these items, or that someone might have done that, and you need to sort of find what has been taken. That's really cool.
Yeah, that could be something you set up, or it's actually, we do have a campaign that we're writing. We've outlined it, and we will release it later on down the line. And we've sort of added a few Easter eggs and kind of foreshadowed that a little bit. But that's kind of like something that we would need to work on its own, because it's so epic in scale, and you could do so much with it. So, like, for example, have fetch quests for these 8 keys and so on.
Nice.
That's
Interesting. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. I've go on, Ross.
I was just going to say, how long did it take you to like sort of collate all of the magic items? Did you just start writing one and then go okay, and then write more and more and more as it went on, or?
Yeah, all of the above. Yes.
Yes.
It's kind of it was very organic. So it kind of grew out of something completely unrelated to Eisendor's Vault. I ran at Worldcon 20 19 in Dublin, I ran a bunch of one-shots 5 days in a row at the convention. I don't recommend that, 5 hours a day, 5 days in a row. That was stiff.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um,
Stamina.
straight, 6, 7 strangers rocking up each time. People you never met, but it was a lot of fun. But I'm not in a hurry to do it anytime soon. But yeah, I wanted to create an adventure based on that one shot, but then I realized that's maybe too big. Let's leave that for maybe next year, or the year after, and then I was like, what do we need to do now? Okay, well let's go for Eisendor's Vault and do a bunch of magic items. And then that turned into something bigger than the original thing. I was like, well, we should have just left that. So it was like, well, let's run with it. And it started off with just me and one of the guys who I play in a game with, Storm King's Thunder. We got together after the world all locked down, and we're like, well, let's just make some magic items for fun and see what happens. And then we had 10 magic items, then we had 20, and then before we knew it, we had over 100. And the idea for the Kickstarter was born, and then we started bringing other people on board because it was just like, this is too much. So it's kind of gone. I went from me being the first person to start making these items to someone who kind of signs off on the items and maybe helps balance them sometimes. But I'm mainly like, focusing on meetings and coordinating art directors and writers and editors and developers and all that stuff. So it's like, I've kind of like gotten away from the creative side, which I really want to get back to.
Yeah.
Right.
Is it kind of strange to see something that you obviously started and in a not a flippant way, but a quite like just makes magic items, suddenly take on this life of its own?
It's insane. I still haven't processed it all. It's like if I'm working with a core team of 10 people who contribute something every week. And then we have all of our freelance artists and writers who maybe contribute things, not as regularly, but, spread out over months or whatever. But it's just like, yeah, this thing has its own legs and it doesn't need me anymore. And it's weird.
Sort of, do you feel a bit like Santa when he started off, making all the toys for the kids, and now all the elves are here, and he's got a whole team, and he's supplying to the entire world. He's just got to do the flights,
Yeah.
very, very much a magic item Santa now.
Yeah, kind of like an afterthought, really,
A historic sort of leftover. Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah.
There is on your Kickstarter page, obviously you have a video on there, and I just wanted to talk momentarily about that because in the intro there is a wonderful bit of poetry read out in very dramatic fashion. I've got the first couple of lines here, and I think I have it right in that. Brave and foolish are those who enter Eisendor's vault of tragic treasure. All have failed, their spirits measured, their souls black ink upon death's ledger. Nice.
Ooh,
it goes on.
nice.
It goes on. It's a
Love
nice,
that.
nice little
Yeah,
hook
it's good.
to get people in
Yeah.
there. It's who is that? Is that read from the point of a narrator? Is there someone in your world, in your lore, who has decreed that? Obviously, they're foretelling the doom of those who might set upon this tragic treasure.
Yeah, that's actually read in the voice of Eisendor himself. He's kind of warning people, you can come and try and get in here and try and take the treasure, but I, recommend that you don't do that.
A simple warning sign would not suffice.
No.
There has to be an epic bit of poetry. An epic it is. It probably doesn't surprise anyone to learn that you are an acclaimed author as well, Paddy, as well.
Oh, I don't know about acclaimed, but I'm an author, yeah.
You've been writing sci-fi and fantasy, is that right?
Yeah, that's how I sort of started in the creative business, I suppose, was writing and publishing my own science fiction works back in, I think I started that maybe 2016, went full time in 2018. And then in the last few years, it kind of like branched off into the TTRPG side of things, which has been a lot of fun. And I've started writing fantasy as well to sort of tie in with, the settings and things like that.
Nice. Is there are you writing fantasy? Is there a whole world extrapolating off this source book? Are you expanding into novels as well?
There are worlds. There are series of novels. Yes.
Oh,
Worlds within worlds.
Mhm.
What do you find? Is it jarring was it a natural organic process to go from writing books and then to be going, how can I make these books interactable? Or was that like easy, or was it going from one to the other and finding out like inner monologues don't always need to be read out loud to the players from books? Was it jarring to go from one to the other, or was it super easy?
Thought it would be super easy, and I was wrong. Yeah, it was. I guess it's like I tried to equate it to, it's still they're two sports. They're just different sports with different rules, but they're still sort of, they still require you to be to have a certain level of experience and, to be fit to a certain degree, as most sports do. Sort of. So there are a lot of skills that you can transfer over, which was useful. It is a publishing business at the end of the day, which I was already running. So, but it is a very different beast at the same time. There is writing, narrating something in the form of, fiction or science fiction or fantasy, and having that structure is completely different, because you're creating a different experience for people, because a novel is a very personal experience between the reader and the writer. So essentially you guys are meeting halfway between both of your minds and creating this experience between the two of you. Whereas with a TTRPG, it's a storytelling tool, but it's for someone else to create this story with a group of people. That's a long way of saying yes, it was a lot harder than I expected.
Nice.
Did you have any what were the sort of issues coming at Kickstarter? Did you come across any problems when you started it out?
Ooh, how long have we got on this podcast? Yeah, so I did foresee. Okay, I'm a big believer in starting things small. So with my books, for example, I started out with science fiction, but the first book I published was a short story collection, and you couldn't even call it that. It was like one short story and two pieces of flash fiction. It was like 12, 13 pages long, really small, but it was just a test of waters. It was a prototype, see what happens. It was received well, so I continued along that path. And I decided to do the same thing with the Kickstarter, because I was like, I don't want to launch this big thing and then learn from all these mistakes on this big thing. So let's do a small one first. We launched, let's see if we can get this copy, the Mag of Holding, back
nice.
in February, I think it was. And by 6 weeks later, we had already fulfilled everything. But we learned a lot in doing that.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's all we have to learn. Yay. We've learned all of our lessons, and then we do the big one, and it's like, there are more lessons.
so many more lessons.
Yeah, it was. I can't really think of anything in particular. I guess, yeah, there were just things we hadn't expected, and different problems and challenges that arise. Yeah.
And that Mag of Holding, which nice name, by the way. Love the name.
Love the name.
Yeah.
That's also one of the goodies you can get in the Kickstarter. Is that right? So you published that as well as a separate thing, separate entity back in February, and then it is also available to be put on the bundle. Is that right?
That's right. You can add it on in the Pledge Manager, or I think you can also add it on as using Kickstarter's new add-on feature as well on the front end. If you select your pledge, then you can add it on. But yeah, it's something we're doing quarterly. So the only time, and we're not selling it in retail or on a shop front yet. That will be later in the year. So if you do want to copy it, does have to be off the back of one of the Kickstarters.
Right. That's cool. Is that a way to work with new writers, people you might not have worked with before, get them in the Mag of Holding, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a great sort of resource for doing that, for before committing to using a writer on a bigger project, which is a bit bigger commitment, obviously, if someone's going to write in a book rather than in a magazine. So it definitely helps with that. But it's more, it's something we wanted to do starting in a year or two, like release a quarterly magazine. But it just so happened that it was like, well, what can we make that's smaller than a book? A magazine. We need something smaller to learn before we do the book thing. So let's just bring that Mag of Holding thing forward and do it now. And then all of a sudden it's like, it was so well received, we just have to keep doing it now. So
nice. Good.
You're a victim of your own success.
No, it's terrible.
Oh, awful, awful,
It's
awful.
tragic.
So you've got the treasure book, and that's got like over 300 items, magic items. What is your favorite item from the book? I'll tell you mine first. When I was looking over them, the ones that are on the thing is the coin of what was it called? The coin of booming. Coin of booming. I like that one. It screeches, doesn't it? Or it makes a noise when it leaves the person that owns it, which is, I find really funny. I think that would be really funny if you just like walking down the street and there's just a coin just going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you dropped that, mate. No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
Yeah, some of them are a bit bizarre and strange, and like that's one of the really funny ones. It's also like if someone steals your coin purse or whatever. They can't get away. But my favorite. That's a good question. I love the bottle of gin.
Right.
Yeah. Because of the personal experience I've had with playtesting it. And when I say playtesting it and it was one that was created in one of my personal campaigns that I run with my friends, and I didn't expect this thing to work the way it did. And when it worked, I was like, oh my, I couldn't have planned this. It's like every dungeon master's dream for something to work out that well, because how often do things work? How often do players do things you expect them to do?
Exactly.
This time it actually happened, and that was so it's a bottle of gin spelled DJINN because essentially it's a portal into the elemental planes and brings you into the elemental plane of air initially, which is where the gin are. And one of my players was asked by an NPC to pass her bottle of gin, and he was the bard, and of course he sneakily took a sip of this bottle of gin as he was trying to sneakily pass it along, and he vanished because it wasn't the bottle of gin he expected, and he ended up in the elemental plane of air, and the rest of the team had to go and get him because if they didn't, he was in trouble. So that led to a load of great awesome things that happen, really nice character development, and I think that's just it's personal to me and very special because of that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
That must be a cool bit to be able to have like home games where you go like, oh, this magic item worked really well. It had a wonderful effect on the players, and then to be able to put that into a publication, you can now share that with so many other people.
Absolutely. And I love it with the magic items as well when they've got that sort of personal feel. Like somebody fashioned this for a specific reason. Why is lost to the mists of time? Like, why did you do this? What a strange object. But it's like, because and if you actually manage to speak to the original maker of it, they'd have a perfectly good reason. But it's inscrutable now because you're like, it's a terrible magic item or it's a weird magic item. I love that. Absolutely love that.
Yeah. And even just like a general, a basic +1 magic sword, why was that created? Not only why was it created, but it's exchanged hands throughout history. Well, who were the people that was there anyone famous who owned this thing, or did it have was it used in a famous battle, or all those things you could do as well.
Yeah, you're so right about that kind of stuff. I think a good addendum to a lot of games that I've played in is people get rid of the whole idea of a +1, +2, or +3 armor or sword or whatever in favor of giving it a name, like and just call it something, or is this color maybe it functions as a +1 longsword, but it's got a story behind it, because you wouldn't find a magic sword be like, oh, I think this adds +1 to some of my stats. It'd be like, well, this sort of Grathala that has been passed down from grass warriors and various different, it would have lore to it, and that's what's good about doing item archaeology and item history and stuff like that. Have you found yourself delving into like famous objects that could tell a story? Are there things you've looked at before for like reference? So upon like having over 300 of these items, like a lot of them would have just sprung from your head. It sounds like you just had a fevered night one night and just woke up and you were surrounded by 300 magic items. But
I wish.
After a bottle of gin,
or 3.
Was there any has there been any famous like artifacts or objects from history that have inspired anything? Has there been any similar stories like that you've been following?
Honest answer is no. I could make something up on the spot, but I'm not going to. Um,
Well, that's
no,
better, I think.
yeah,
That way it's all from your own brain then, and it's that way
yeah,
it's not running the risk of something becoming derivative.
yeah. It's. I mean, there have been like really cool items where we were like, oh, you see items in history and you think, well, that would make an interesting magic item. I have had that experience, but I haven't really done that with this book. It is mainly, it's kind of it's story based and character based. So for example, we have an assassin, and someone in playtest pointed out that they really like this assassin, and she's wearing like a kimono and sort of that traditional Japanese garb, and has other traditional Japanese items on her. And so we were like, okay, let's turn everything she's wearing into magic items, and then kind of expanded from that. And then we end up with fans, and the tie-in with different martial arts and things like that. So there was that kind of organic growth out of things that exist in the real world. And yeah, but there wasn't anything in terms of like an artifact or anything that stood out that we took and ran with.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It's interesting. There's a whole conversation there, isn't there? Because we all grew up surrounded by, the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant from watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, or these sort of magic items that who knows what will have happened to them. And of course, in the world of fantasy, it's rather more the sort of mundane miracles, isn't it? They're everywhere. So it's like, oh yes, well this one it's only a +1.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Yeah, we did work in things like Goldilocks' hairbrush, the three little pigs, Big Bad Wolf, Goldilocks and Three Bears,
Nice.
and they're like little pendants, and they all do things. They're related to what the story was about and things like that. So we
there's
did
one-
work out some things like that. Yeah.
So is one of the pendants really, really hot, and one of them's really, really cold, and then one of them's just right.
Essentially, yeah.
And the other one allows you to steal all three of those and just bugger off of them. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it's
it.
like it's it kind of allows you to get like a short rest or a long rest in a shorter space of time, or a longer space of time, depending on the roll of the dice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Cool.
on the size of the bed and whose bed who's been sleeping in. Very good. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose with that James as well. The objects that you mentioned from films and stuff. They're narrative points, aren't they? So when you're doing that kind of stuff, you know that you're doing this for an outcome. Like the Holy Grail is going to be this funny film thing. And so the Covenant. But when you're doing a TTRPG, you've got to put this thing in and be like, this will have multifaceted purposes, none of
Yes.
which I will ever see the end to. Take
Yeah,
this. It is a seed of chaos. Put it in your campaign. I don't know what you're going to use it for, and therefore the design around it, I imagine, it's got to be more multifaceted in that respect. You've got to make it more robust and more designed for any eventuality, I suppose, rather than like a linear film or a book.
Yeah, I think we need to include the holy hand grenade somehow. Only call it the holy
yeah.
firebomb or something.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a sort of question, because obviously speaking of fictional magic items, is there, you don't have to give specifics, but are there magic items in there which have the potential to be the sort of the One Ring, something that is cataclysmically sort of powerful in the wrong hands? Obviously you don't have to say, but that has so you could weave that kind of tale.
Yeah, definitely. There are several. One of them is the armor of Oldenheim. It's kind of a current a work in progress, but it's kind of like this black dark armor, and the narrative side of it is I'm using in one of my own games is the warlock has a patron, and it's one of the great old ones, and essentially she found this based on directions given by her patron in her mind. It's kind of like guiding her into to find this armor, and because she wanted armor, and it allows her to use it despite her not being proficient in that armor. So it's kind of designed for her and her class, but it does this thing where it has like loads of little recesses in it, and you can kind of put a little orb in those recesses if you find them throughout wherever your DM wants to put them, and they add little boons and benefits to that armor, so it kind of increases each time you upgrade it. But also it comes at a price, right? And that price is the great old one. Each time, or whatever the patron is in your game, each time you add one of these things in, the the patron can control you, pretty much possess you, and the wisdom DC say for that increases in difficulty each time you add another orb, right? So it's
Nice.
Cool.
sort of stuff like that, and then eventually they can use you to do their bidding and free themselves, or whatever nefarious
Great.
thing they have in mind. So
Nice.
Amazing.
Excellent.
So
That's
cool.
a wonderful bit of bringing like the story, hard lining that into mechanics of play. I love that kind of stuff where mechanics of play, or you get a boon or whatever, and like obviously all players love getting magic loot, and that's great. But if you do so, bam, here's a bit of story, here's a bit of backstory, here's a bit of like extra plot going on that's worked mechanically into the item. I think that's a great idea. Do you find that maybe then running it, that DMs sort of slowly looking at this being like, yeah, it's really easy to find all these customizable bits, because then the DM's going, yeah, 'cause then I get to pay your patron.
I thought literally, yeah, there's a DM be that. There's the armor, and there's this bag just next to it, just full of orbs. just slot them in.
take them all.
Oh, this is great. Yes, keep doing that.
Another great thing you could seed in, isn't it? Like you give the player and the players the knowledge of what it is, and then you give them the rough map of like where the orbs are, and then you leave it up to them. How much control do you want to give the DM? How for power? You trade it off for power. It's a brilliant balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those magic items, I had a favorite too. I'm just skimmed over the ones you've got on the Kickstarter page. It was the Dragon Queen's chess piece. I thought this was a cool bit of kit. Small, like a chess piece, and when activated, you roll a d8, and each of the 8 options are a wonderful bit of insight on the current enemy you're fighting, their current weaknesses, their vulnerabilities, what their lowest stat is, what their highest stat is. And you get 3 uses a day, and then a d4 like to replenish them at each long rest. But I thought, in my head, that was such a clear usage then, a sort of like mid to high level play when you're encountering strange, mythical, exotic things and maybe bosses on like a regular basis, where you're constantly fighting something new or alien. You just gotta we have to know what this thing is in ideally the first couple of rounds. So just the idea of someone thumbing that chess piece frantically at the start of battle to get an insight on it, I thought was a cool idea. Again, mechanics of getting knowledge in return for like a mechanical boon, I think is a cool trait.
Yeah. I will say, I think Mark Boyd, so myself and Mark started off this thing just creating magical items and kind of refining them over the time, and then we had like maybe 2 other developers come on board. So I have to say, credit where credit is due. It wasn't just me creating these items; it was a team of people, and that's one of his creations, and it is a fantastic little piece. Yeah, I think his thought was, it was like there's a game in D&D called Three Dragon Ante, which we obviously can't use for copyright and trademark purposes and whatever, but it was just this idea where you win this little thing once you win the tournament, and it lets you do something. So,
Nice.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And a lot of these items, we're getting a lot of love from the chat, just about how cool they sound, and they sound like they could be character defining. Like, if you got some artwork made of your character, and like Scott said, they're there with that chess piece, or there with that armor and stuff like that. How do you feel about someone sort of just becoming so enthused with it?
That's part of the appeal, I think, is it's there for players to maybe there are some items where it is a +1 sword that just does a few extra things, right? Or a shield gives you +1 to your AC plus something else that's nice. But we did try to put a lot of thought into a lot of the items in terms of what this could be, something that a character can work towards, or something that does define a character, or something that can just create a whole new story line or plot line for a character. Like another example would be the snow globe. It's called Markofat's neat little town, and essentially it's this little snow globe that's been sitting on a shelf in some shop, and it's all dusty and it's been sitting there for so long. But it's actually this magic item that you can shrink and go into with your party, and it's a city full of automatons, and it's got its own sort of structure, its own politics, and these people have their own problems, and the players can help them, and or they can use it as their own little getaway, or maybe they don't want to do anything, they can just leave it.
That's amazing. Yeah, the idea of like the first time that an adventuring party goes in, they're like, "What the heck? How do we get out?" But then getting out, then the next time, like 3 levels later, they're like, "Should we? Do you want to just quick holiday in the lovely little automaton town? It'd be nice when
should
it's
go to the Cog Tavern and
Yeah.
That's great.
And, so I was just gonna say, so you've got the book of magic items, but you also have something else for the backers as well, don't you? You have the Order of Elemental Chaos, which is an adventure book for levels 1 to 15 now, I believe, because of the you've reached the stretch goal.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell everyone about that a little bit without spoilers, obviously, because you don't.
Sure. Okay, so essentially it's based off the Bottle of Gin, but it is its own adventure module, and it takes players through the 4 primary elemental planes. So the elemental plane of air, fire, water, and earth before they get cast into the elemental chaos. And the idea is, so you found the bottle of gin, and anyone that rolls high in perception will find it's giving off a bit of static. They might notice it isn't just liquid. There's maybe clouds in there, and maybe some lightning sparking across it. So then it brings them into the elemental plane of air. Once they come out of there, they'll notice the bottle changes to the color red, and they might notice it's actually like flames, not like a red liquid. So that'll take them into the elemental plane of fire. So every time they get to the end of one elemental plane, they return to their own plane, and then they can go back in and do the next stage, essentially. So it's one of those things where you can drop it into a campaign. I know a lot of campaigns, start with that. It's like a lot of books start with, this could be run as is, or you could drop it into your own, own setting or campaign, but they don't really give you the mechanics to support that. It's like you have to do all this work and strip it out. So this is kind of designed to, you can just drop it in, right? Your players can drink out of this bottle and go into the plane anytime they want, right? And it's like a side quest, a series of side quests. But we also have, the structure there if people want to run through the whole thing. So it's these evil genies have come together. They were locked away for a long time ago. Markovad, Eisendor's master, created the bottle of gin for the genie. The noble genies commissioned her to do that, and it locked them away because they made a pact with let's call them celestial and primordial beings, right, and titans, to get this great power. So they can't really be destroyed, so they have to be locked away, and they're trying to break free after aeons of time. And essentially the players need to find a way to lock them back in the bottle, or to finally destroy them once and for all before they tear apart the elemental planes and all those planes that are built upon them, such as the material plane, right? So I mean, there's great hooks in that. You could have you're running your normal campaign on the Sword Coast, or wherever you're running it in your home brew session, but there start to be tidal waves and tornadoes and these earth-rending storms and lightning, and the city's destroyed because it was by the coast and a tsunami hit it, or and then the players have to get to the bottom of it, and they find out that, oh, it's happening because of the balance between the elements has been upset because of these genies, and they need to go into the bottle, and so there are ways to kind of hook them into the adventure as well.
And is that written by just yourself, or a group of people as well?
I would say that one is written by about 90% of it is written by me.
Yeah.
And the other 10% would be Chris Black, who is an amazing writer and did a lot of the lore in Eisendor's Vault of Tragic Treasure. I got him to help me with that because he's so good a writer. So
nice.
Yeah, fantastic. And sadly, I mean, we're getting quite short of time. I mean, it has flown by. I'm sure everyone on the chat's the same. It's so fun hearing about these magic items and these things like this. Just from the chat, the artwork has got a shout out. B-Day says the artwork is top notch. Do you want to give a little shout out to the sort of, we've got a bit of artwork there in the background of Scott. It's really good. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the artwork?
Yeah, I'm we're incredibly lucky to have such a pool of talented artists that we work with. It's been I suppose it's we built relationships up over the last year, 2 years to and we've been just very fortunate to work with people like Liam Hammond and Darren Miller, who have done not nearly all of the props. And then Enrique DLD and his wife Gerling Costa, she did the cover. And yeah, just they would be the main artists we work with, the main four. There are others who we kind of hire on a just as we need them basis, but they would do the lion's share of the work in the books and also the Mag of Holding. So yeah, those guys are and Peter Hunter, our art director, I'd be lost without him. So
yeah, fantastic work, guys. Really, really cool.
Yeah, and on the art bit, actually, you have on the GM screen, which I think you have as part of the bundle, and elsewhere in your art, you have a quite evocative depiction of two dragons locked in an aerial battle. Who are these dragons, and why do they hate each other so much?
okay, so the white one is Solastra, the black one is called Durkaros, and essentially they are avatars of ancient gods, right? So the kind of like the first primordial gods that kind of emerged from what you might want to call the universe, and one represents chaos, the other one represents order, or evil and good, or whatever we want to call it. And they're just in this constant state of conflict throughout all of time, and of course they need each other to survive because one cannot exist without the other. So even though they're in this constant struggle, they need each other. Plus, their constant struggle creates everything else around them. So it's from their struggle that creation was born, and that all sort of feeds into the mythos. And they're I could go on and on and on forever, but but they do feature in certain parts of certain other books that we're working on. So it's just like I said, those Easter eggs. So they're like the order and chaos in the order of elemental chaos, and they're also referenced in Eisendor's Vault of Tragic Treasure because they kind of tie together.
Nice. And actually, that's a very good point, Scott. Do you want to give us a quick rundown? Thank you so much to the lovely Steph, who's posted the link not once but twice in our chat for the Kickstarter. People should go and back it. Like, it sounds so freaking awesome. You've got 3 days left to do it. What will people get when they back this Kickstarter?
Okay, well, it depends on what tier they back at, but I mean, they can get the PDFs, or they can get the collection of the 2 books, which will also include the PDFs, obviously. One of the challenges we had, I guess, was, I mean, you asked like what was some of the problems earlier. One of them was because this is one of the bigger things, we didn't really communicate the best what people will get at some tiers. We've tried to work that out as we've gone along, but everyone gets like a free set of I think it's 9 STLs, and the STL packs are to go along with the Order of Elemental Chaos book, which we just wanted GMs who like to print stuff to have everything that they need to run the game.
And STLs are for 3D printers, right?
Yeah, they're files for 3D printers.
I'm not gonna lie, I had to look up what they stood for, and I've since found out they stand for Standard Tessellation Language or Standard Triangle Language. I didn't know that before. I know that now.
You know more than I do.
Yep, you're a bigger man. You're a bigger man than me, because it came up in the chat, and Steph was like, "They're really cool," and I was like, "I do not know what STLs are, but I will mention it." Just thank you, Scott, for taking that bullet.
Yeah.
So you can basically print your own miniatures, and
yeah.
Yeah,
we're giving a bunch of those away for free, and we're hoping that by the end we unlock all of the packs so that they're all available for people who want them. We'll see how it goes, but that's the plan.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that could be a thing of the future. I think that 3D printing's here to stay, and obviously, people printing their own minis, and it could be more and more of a thing.
That's one of the it's been really mind blowing for me, is like taking this idea out of my head, giving a brief to the illustrator, they create the illustration, I give it off to the STL sculptor, he sculpts it in his 3D program, he gives it to me, I then go and give it to the guy who prints it, he prints it off, I then give it to Peter Hunter, our art director, who paints it because he's a professional mini painter as well. And it's like, it's just going through that whole process and seeing the evolution, and then you have this. Unfortunately, I brought them into the office with me today, and I don't have them with me. But you're left with these physical minis. And you're like, I created that. How did that happen?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Nice.
And not only that, but you created a whole lot more with with both yourself and an incredibly talented team of people. I don't know about you, but I'm super excited. Paddy, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. This has been Paddy Finn from Penny Dragon Games. Do check out the Kickstarter, which now has 3 times it's been linked in our chat. It sounds so exciting and cool, and you have been an absolute storming guest. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming on, Paddy. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Not at all. It's a pleasure. And you're welcome anytime. And of course, I should say goodbye to our 2 usual Danger Club members. It is Scott Wilson-Musgrave.
Thanks very much. Going to go bury myself in over 300 magic items now.
Yeah, of course you can. I would lock myself in that vault and you would never see me again. Maybe appearing sort of around the country somewhere. And it's goodbye from Ross.
Yeah, see you later, Moneypenny. I'll be back later.
So he's been on the other bottle of gin. And and it's goodbye from Paddy Finn. I'll give you a last chance to say goodbye.
Yeah, all the best, everyone. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And it's goodbye from me, James Foxy Lockhart, wishing you, of course, a very healthy and productive Wednesday. And remember, stay dangerous. We'll see you soon. Night, everyone.
Bye.
Before the others catch up to you, Bubba, you just see a big spider web on one of the bushes.
Okay.
Oh,
Right.
dear.
Yeah.
We better watch out for Webby
What?
Johnsons.
There's going to be, Weber Douglases all over the place.
Yes.
What's Webby Douglas's?
Mandible Mondays.
Yeah.
What are they?
Oh, they're just friendly forest
Because
folk.
webs are. Because you just said webs, and webs come from spiders.
Nah,
from me,
nah,
I
nah,
can-
nah.
There's a spider.
I can make
There's
webs happen.
a spider. There's a spider right there.
Oh,
No,
Dalton,
how does-
it's not a
How does
spider.
he fail to
Don't
know
worry.
most things,
Wait,
but he can
are
understand
you-
that a web comes from a spider? How has he got knowledge?
Are you sure? I'm not coming any closer if there's a spider there.
No, there's not.
It's
Don't,
okay.
Just don't
There's
point it
no,
out to me.
I made the
spider.
verb. I did the verb. It was me. Okay.
I'm gonna roll to see if you're lying to me. A natural 20. You're lying to me. You're lying.
How do you?
All right, all right.